The restaurant was almost empty when Ethan Walker received the call that would change his life forever. Outside, rain hammered against the windows like tiny fists. Inside, soft music played while wealthy guests laughed over expensive meals. Ethan had just finished cleaning tables after his second job when his phone vibrated in his pocket. The number was unfamiliar, but something in his chest tightened before he answered. What he heard on the other end made the color drain from his face. His boss needed help. Not because of work. Not because of business. But because she was trapped in a situation that frightened her. And Ethan had no idea that the woman he was about to rescue had been quietly in love with him for years. Before we continue, if you believe kindness still matters, if you believe good people deserve second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest act of compassion can change a life forever. Ethan Walker was 36 years old and exhausted almost every minute of every day. Life had not been gentle with him. 3 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him alone to raise their 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Since then, every day had become a balancing act between survival and responsibility. He woke before sunrise, packed school lunches, braided Lily's hair despite never learning properly, rushed to work, picked her up after school, helped with homework, and then worked evenings whenever he could find extra hours. Sleep became a luxury he rarely enjoyed. Despite everything, Ethan never complained. People who knew him often wondered how someone carrying so much pain could still be so kind. At Walker and Hayes Financial Group, where he worked as a facilities manager, employees respected him. Executives trusted him. Security guards greeted him like family. Cleaning staff loved him because he treated everyone equally. Among those who noticed him most was the company's co-owner, Charlotte Hayes. Charlotte was successful, intelligent, and admired throughout the city. At 34, she had built one of the fastest-growing financial firms in the state. Newspapers called her a visionary. Business magazines featured her on their covers. But nobody knew how lonely she truly was. Success had brought money, recognition, and influence. It had not brought happiness. Over the years, Charlotte had watched Ethan from a distance. Not in the way people often imagine. She noticed the small things. The way he stayed late to help coworkers without expecting credit. The way he carried a tiny pink backpack when picking up Lily from the office during emergencies. The way he smiled at everyone, even on difficult days. The way grief still lived quietly behind his eyes. While wealthy investors competed for Charlotte's attention and ambitious executives tried impressing her, she found herself admiring the one man who never seemed interested in impressing anyone. The problem was simple. Ethan saw her only as his boss. Nothing more. So Charlotte buried her feelings and focused on work. Years passed. Then came the night that changed everything. One evening, Charlotte reluctantly agreed to a date arranged by mutual business associates. The man was wealthy, charming on paper, and came from a powerful family. Everyone insisted he was perfect. Charlotte wasn't interested. But constant pressure eventually wore her down. The date was scheduled at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. At first, everything seemed normal. Then subtle warning signs began appearing. The man spoke endlessly about himself. He mocked waiters. He made arrogant comments about women. As the evening continued, his behavior grew increasingly unsettling. Charlotte tried ending the dinner politely, but he became persistent. Then controlling. Then angry. What had begun as an uncomfortable evening slowly transformed into something frightening. Feeling trapped, Charlotte excused herself and went to the restroom. Her hands trembled as she stared at her reflection. She felt embarrassed. Scared. Alone. Most of all, she felt foolish for ignoring her instincts. The only person she could think of was Ethan. Not because he was strong. Not because he could fight. But because she trusted him completely. Trust was something Charlotte rarely gave anyone. So she called him. At first, Ethan thought there had been some emergency at the office. When he realized what was happening, he looked at the clock. It was late. Lily was asleep at home with his elderly neighbor watching her. He should have stayed. Instead, he grabbed his coat and drove through heavy rain. The entire journey felt endless. When he arrived, he immediately spotted Charlotte. Even from across the room, he could see fear in her eyes. Something inside him hardened. Not anger. Protectiveness. The kind that appears when decent people witness someone vulnerable. Without hesitation, Ethan walked directly to the table. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Charlotte's date looked annoyed. Charlotte looked relieved. Ethan calmly approached and created the perfect excuse, explaining that an urgent company matter required Charlotte's immediate attention. The other man protested. Ethan remained calm. The tension grew. Eventually, after several uncomfortable moments, Charlotte stood and left with Ethan. Only once they reached the parking garage did she finally exhale. The rain echoed through the concrete structure while tears threatened to form in her eyes. For the first time all evening, she felt safe. Ethan drove her home. The city lights blurred through sheets of rain. Neither said much. Yet something profound changed during that drive. Charlotte saw the man she loved with complete clarity. Not as an employee. Not as a friend. But as someone whose character shined brightest when nobody was watching. Ethan, meanwhile, believed he had simply helped a friend. Nothing more. The following weeks felt different. Charlotte found herself seeking reasons to spend time with him. Work meetings became slightly longer. Conversations became more personal. She learned about Lily's dreams of becoming a veterinarian. She learned how Ethan secretly skipped meals for months to make sure his daughter never lacked anything. She learned that grief still visited him every night after Lily fell asleep. Each discovery deepened her feelings. Yet Ethan remained completely unaware. His world revolved around work and fatherhood. Romance seemed like a distant memory belonging to another life. Then another challenge arrived. One afternoon, Ethan received devastating news. The building housing his apartment complex had been sold. Residents were being forced to relocate. Rental prices across the city had skyrocketed. Finding affordable housing quickly seemed impossible. The stress crushed him. For days he searched endlessly. Every option was either too expensive or unsuitable for Lily. The uncertainty brought back feelings he hadn't experienced since losing his wife. Fear. Not for himself. For his daughter. Charlotte noticed the change immediately. The tired eyes. The forced smiles. The growing anxiety. Eventually she learned the truth. She wanted to help. But she also knew Ethan's pride. Offering money directly would embarrass him. So she searched for another way. Weeks later, the company announced a new employee housing assistance initiative. Most workers assumed it was part of an expansion plan. Only Charlotte knew the truth. She had personally designed it around Ethan's situation. Through the program, Ethan qualified for a beautiful townhouse at a significantly reduced cost. A safe neighborhood. Excellent schools. A small backyard where Lily could play. When Ethan received the news, he nearly cried. For the first time in months, hope returned. That evening Lily ran through their future home laughing with excitement. Watching her smile felt like sunlight after years of storms. Yet Ethan still didn't understand who had made it possible. Charlotte never sought recognition. She only wanted him to be okay. Months passed. Their friendship deepened naturally. Lily grew especially fond of Charlotte. Whenever Charlotte visited company events, Lily seemed drawn to her warmth. Charlotte attended school fundraisers anonymously. She donated books to Lily's classroom. She remembered birthdays. She listened. Little by little, she became part of their lives. Then fate intervened again. One winter afternoon, Lily collapsed during a school activity. The call reached Ethan while he was working. Panic consumed him. At the hospital, doctors explained that Lily required treatment for a serious but manageable medical condition. The prognosis was positive, but expenses would be significant. The world seemed to tilt beneath Ethan's feet. He had already sacrificed everything. There wasn't much left to sacrifice. That night he sat alone in a hospital corridor staring at the floor. Years of strength finally cracked. The weight became too heavy. Too much grief. Too much responsibility. Too many battles. Charlotte arrived quietly. She sat beside him. No speeches. No empty promises. Just presence. Sometimes the greatest comfort comes from someone willing to share your silence. Over the following weeks, Charlotte helped coordinate resources, schedules, and support. She used every connection available to ensure Lily received the best care possible. Once again, Ethan assumed she was simply being generous. He never imagined love was motivating every decision. Then came the moment everything changed. One spring evening, nearly a year after the restaurant incident, Ethan attended a company charity gala. The event celebrated community service and employee contributions. Hundreds attended. Business leaders, local officials, investors, employees. Toward the end of the night, a presentation highlighted individuals whose actions had impacted others. To Ethan's shock, his name appeared. Photos filled the screen. Images of volunteer projects, community work, mentorship programs, acts of kindness he barely remembered. The audience applauded. Ethan felt embarrassed by the attention. Then a final slide appeared. It showed Charlotte. Beside it was a message describing how one employee had repeatedly changed lives without expecting anything in return. The room fell silent. Charlotte stepped onto the stage. Emotion filled her eyes. For years, she explained, she had watched a man carry unbearable burdens with grace and compassion. She spoke about courage, about integrity, about kindness, about love expressed through actions rather than words. As Ethan listened, realization slowly dawned. Every memory connected. Every unexplained act of support. Every thoughtful gesture. Every moment she had appeared exactly when needed. The truth became impossible to ignore. Charlotte had never been helping out of obligation. She had been helping because she loved him. The audience faded into the background. The elegant ballroom disappeared. For a brief moment, it felt as though only two people existed. A lonely single father. A woman who had quietly loved him through his darkest chapters. Tears filled Ethan's eyes. Not because someone loved him, but because after years of feeling broken, invisible, and alone, he finally understood that someone had truly seen him. Seen every scar, every struggle, every weakness, and loved him anyway. If this story is touching your heart so far, please take a moment to leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you and know that these stories are reaching people around the world. After the event, Ethan spent days reflecting. Love frightened him. Loss had taught him how fragile happiness could be. But Charlotte never pressured him. She simply remained herself. Patient, kind, steady. Eventually, Ethan realized something important. The greatest risk wasn't opening his heart again. The greatest risk was refusing happiness when it finally arrived. For years he had survived. Now he wanted to live. Months later, on a warm summer afternoon, Ethan stood in the backyard of the townhouse that had become a home. Lily laughed nearby while chasing butterflies. Charlotte sat beneath a tree, smiling. The scene felt ordinary. Yet it was everything Ethan once thought he had lost forever. Peace. Family. Hope. The journey had not erased pain. His wife's memory remained precious. His struggles remained part of his story. But he had learned that loving again does not betray the past. Sometimes it honors it. Because the people we lose would never want us trapped in sorrow forever. They would want us to keep moving forward. To keep believing. To keep loving. And that is exactly what Ethan finally did. Before we end, if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you that kindness can change lives, please like the video, share it with someone special, and subscribe for more emotional stories. The truth is that Charlotte fell in love with Ethan long before he noticed her feelings. Yet the moment that changed everything wasn't a grand gesture or a romantic confession. It was a rainy night when a tired single father chose to help someone in need without expecting anything in return. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. And sometimes the person whose life you save is the same person who has been waiting to save yours. In the end, Ethan thought he was rescuing his boss from a terrible date'll.